My name is Chandalya Sivakumar. I have completed my graduation in applied accounting from Oxford Brookes University, and I'm also affiliated member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, which is a UK-based professional accountancy body. And I have also worked with Ernst& and Young for about 2 years in their US International Tax Quantitative Services, and I'm currently working towards my master's program in finance at the University of Texas at Dallas.
Hello, panel. Thank you for joining us. It's beneficial to have industry professionals critique our analysis, so I appreciate your time. My name is Jordan Hawks. I'm an MBA student here at UT Dallas. This is the second finance class that I've ever taken, and I heard about how difficult the class was before I chose to take it, and but I also heard how beneficial it was to really learn the material. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the class. And it's got me wishing actually that I would have taken even more finance classes up to this point. So once again, thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Devon Stovall, and I'm pursuing a master's in finance.
Hi, Professor and other jurists. My name is Qianwen Kang. I'm a student majoring in finance, and this is my first time doing the financial modeling project. I found it quite interesting, while a little bit challenged. I hope I have more chance to experience such things later.
On the right-hand side, we have United Health Group, which was founded in 1977 and has now become one of the largest healthcare companies in the world in terms of revenue. They provide a variety of services, including pharmaceuticals, health insurance, healthcare management expertise, data management and solutions, and etc. On the left-hand side, we have Diplomat Pharmacy, which is our target company. It is one of the largest independent provider of specialty pharmacy services in the United States. They offer specialized medications to patients with complex medical conditions such as cancer, HIV, hepatitis. So what Diplomat typically does is that they coordinate with healthcare teams and distributors to provide simplified therapy process for these patients. So the patients do not have to worry about the process involved and can focus towards getting better quickly. So on December 9th, 2019, United Health Group announced that they would be acquiring Diplomat Pharmacy under their brand Optum. And the acquisition is going to be an equity deal, meaning that United Health will acquire Diplomat's debt as well as equity. The terms would be that they would be purchasing both their equity and the debt obligations of the firm. So they would be paying about $300 million, which is equivalent to $4 per share. And they would be taking over about $560 million of debt of the company.
So I'm going to be giving a quick overview of Diplomat's financial position. So I'm going to start out with their financial strengths. They have positive revenues consistently year over year, with about $4.4 billion in 2016 to $5.5 billion in 2019. They have a stable capital structure, averaging about 30% debt to equity, excluding special circumstances. And at the beginning of the life cycle, they are very profitable with positive net incomes that tapered off towards the beginning of 2018 and into 2019. Some of their financial weaknesses would be the acquisition decisions ultimately leading to their close to bankruptcy, not official bankruptcy, but close enough. If they had continued business, they would have been bankrupt, with goodwill impairments costing them $224 million in 2018 and $469 million in 2019. They are heavily debt financed in those later years as well, with 137% debt to equity in 2018 and 447% debt to equity in 2019. They have a negative return on equity due to their negative net income and their negative retained earnings. They are unable to pay their debts because they have no cash reserves. They've depleted all their retained earnings. They actually have no cash, and they're increasing their debt positions, making them very unstable. There is no option to liquidate this company. All their liquidation ratios are below 1, and if the company was to be liquidated, the debt holders would gain all the benefits. Some of the biggest threats facing Diplomat is once again the threat of bankruptcy and competition. Competition in this industry is very steep, with CVS and Walgreens holding about 20% of the market separately, with Diplomat's 4% overall. Smaller companies in this industry are actually getting pushed out or acquired, and that presents some opportunities for Diplomat. If Diplomat can get acquired, they could stabilize their capital structure and gain a larger foothold in the market. The market itself for both the PBM and specialty pharmacy services is growing about 2% each year, year over year. So another opportunity, if Diplomat was to continue business, would be gaining 2% growth initially just from the market. Another opportunity for them would be selling their acquired businesses. Once again, this is what ultimately led to their close to bankruptcy, not official bankruptcy. So I'm going to go over some of the deal rationales for OptumRx acquiring Diplomat. OptumRx would benefit from the additional segment from their specialty pharmacy services and benefit from Diplomat's pharmacy management business. This would be a horizontal merger, so operational synergies become available through a decreasing cost of goods sold and a decreasing SG&A expense. OptumRx would be able to establish a company in the specialty pharmacy segment, reaching a segment that was previously untouched by them. Some of the financial synergies would include a lower cost of debt for Diplomat, going from 10% to 1%. There would also be a tax benefit for OptumRx because they acquired Diplomat at a negative cash flow. They would be able to implement cost savings of about 1% in SG&A annually, and this is seen through the acquisitions of other businesses within this industry. And Diplomat's PBM segment is all but free to OptumRx because of the financial position of Diplomat. OptumRx is able to acquire Diplomat at a very low price and get almost $700 million in revenue for free. Most of the financial synergy, or most of the synergies within this acquisition are financial synergies with increasing revenues, tax shields, but operational synergies do play a small role in there with, again, observably 1% decrease in SG&A throughout the industry and a 0.25% decrease in cost of goods sold throughout the industry as well. Financial synergies could be estimated around 3 to 4 billion in revenues. And operational synergies would increase operation margins by about 2%. And this is observed again by similar transactions within this industry.
So the part 4 is about assumptions we made for our financial models. We basically use 4 methods to forecast the financials in projected periods. The first method, which applies in many financials, is to average the historical data. There are a few examples below, such as we use the average days payable outstanding and days inventory held to forecast the inventory and account payable. The reason is we didn't see any plans or strategies and management guidance could highly influence those financials. The second method is we follow the management guidance to forecast the revenue in 2019, since the company had been acquired before the annual report came out, so we couldn't get 10K at last. The third method is what we used for some non-recurring items, like the goodwill impairments happened in 2018, mainly because the failed acquisition of LDI and NPS. The last method is what we use for the forecasting of revenue's growth rate. We try to analyze it in 2 ways, using sales growth model or performance driver model. In the sales growth model, we use the information in annual report, separating the revenue into 2 segments with its unit price and total units, and average the growth rate of past 3 years, since the company only bought PBM business 3 years ago. Besides, for the performance driver model, we used is from the research report of JP Morgan by building up a regression model with a few correlated factors. As for the self-correlation part in itself, we use the historical growth rate on accounting base. Luckily, the growth rate we got from two models are pretty close. So at the end, we use the result of performance driver model as our growth model because it seems much more convenient.
When using the DCF valuation methodology to value the company, we need to follow certain steps. First, we need to calculate the levered beta of the firm. Then we need to calculate the weighted average cost of capital of the firm. Then we need to use the pro forma financial statements to arrive at the firm free cash flows and the terminal value of the firm. And finally, calculate the equity value of the firm. Using the methodology, we arrive at an equity value of about $1.55 billion, which is equivalent to a share price of $13.29 per share. Here we have a sensitivity analysis table where we can see that as the weighted average cost of capital decreases, we notice that the implied share price of the firm also to increase. So they're inversely proportional. And we also notice that for the debt to reduce, for the weighted average cost of capital to reduce, we also need the debt component also to reduce from the capital structure.
Part 6 deals with trading multiples and transaction multiples. So starting off with trading multiples, our goal here was to find companies from the same industry, same size, growth, and profitability as Diplomat. So we looked for companies first that dealt exclusively in specialty pharmacy and PBM like Diplomat. We were unable to find public companies. And so in order to get the data that we needed, we looked for public companies that had business segments that contained specialty pharmacy and PBM. We were able to find some, but as we started to gather segment data, we learned that different companies report segment financials differently. And so sometimes the data was inconsistent and sometimes it was inadequate. So we then took our list of companies and we found companies that had the highest relative proportion of their revenue coming from the segment that contained specialty pharmacy and PBM. And we moved forward with those companies as comparables. The companies that we moved forward with, most of them are much larger than Diplomat, which doesn't lend itself well to accuracy for our valuation. And in addition to that, Diplomat is near bankruptcy and the comparable companies are healthy companies. And so our main conclusion for trading multiples is that likely other valuations will be more accurate. You can reference the graphs in the PowerPoint slide and see that our valuations were all over the place depending on the multiple that we used. For transaction multiples, we had several companies that we had transaction data for, both for specialty pharmacy and PBM. So we calculated multiples for each of those segments based on the transaction data that we had, and then we used those multiples to provide a value for Diplomat. We added those values together and received $976.6 million. Part 7 deals with scenario analysis. There are 3 scenarios we'd like to analyze. The first one, no deal is reached to acquire Diplomat. Under this scenario, we think there's a high likelihood that Diplomat will declare bankruptcy. Their current ratio is 0.5, indicating that they're unable to meet short-term obligations. They have a successful specialty pharmacy and infusion business. Mainly their financial troubles have come from a failure to successfully integrate the PBM systems that they acquired in late 2017. Because of that, we think Chapter 11 is how they would file. That would allow creditors to continue to extract value from the successful specialty pharmacy operations. Because they're so highly leveraged, we think that shareholders would be left with little to nothing in the settlement. Scenario 2, Diplomat is acquired by Optum and normal market conditions follow. Diplomat currently has a shrinking customer base because of the troubles to integrate their PBM system. We think that that would be reversed due to the synergy that's available between Diplomat's successful specialty pharmacy and infusion operations and Optum's successful PBM system. The costs that are associated with that integration would fall to Optum, and also the debt that Diplomat assumed to acquire NPS and LDI in late 2017 would also fall to Optum. Scenario 3, Diplomat is acquired by Optum and COVID-19 impacts market conditions. We also see Diplomat's customer base growing under Scenario 3, only we think it would grow faster. This is because their operations are essential. so they would continue as normally as possible. Only the number of customers that are seeking touchless transactions or online services would like to be higher than under normal market conditions.
In part A, I'd like to give a conclusion of the transaction and a comparison between different valuation methods we used to offer the recommended price range. For the acquisition deal, we see it as a successful transaction for both the seller and the buyer. For Optum Rocks, or to say for United Health Group, we could expect that the capacity of infusion services would increase in the future, and the distribution network would expand as well. And as for Diplomat, the acquisition could save the company from eroding customer volumes and bad financial performance. So combining those effects, we think both sides could gain benefits from it. And about the comparison between different methods, we chose some estimated value from different institutes as benchmarks. We could see DCF method seems a little bit larger. The reason of it we consider might be the assumption of high growth rate. The growth rate might not keep in 30% in long term or 9% of WACC for eternity. But based on all the information we got so far about the health equipment and services industry, the growth rate seems experiencing a high-speed increase over the past few years. So we still choose to keep the assumption at last. And as we need to make money from the acquisition as a buyer, our recommended price range would be under our lowest estimate value, which is 976. So the range would be around or under the 900 to make the deal profitable.